politics, you know. So I guess we're living in the world whereby
But they're finding each other.
things are getting better somewhere, and from generation to generation, I think it will fade in time. It will fade away, you know.
What? Politics?
Racism,
Racism?
yeah. In
Yeah, I
time,
think
it
so.
will fade away because from generation to some going forward, children don't care, and they grow up in, now they go to school together, they play together, they do everything together, unlike before when other people were going to school there, other people were going to school there. So
But listen, in 500 years' time, are we still going to talk about apartheid? Will the ANC still campaign on apartheid?
you're touching on a sensitive issue. You are really touching on a sensitive
You're the one that says we will
issue.
get over it in time.
The thing is that people will say, people were harmed, so we cannot forget. That's where they're standing with it.
500 years now, is there something to remember?
You said something about the reason why Israel and Palestine are still fighting today. And then
Okay, but that's a different context.
No, I understand.
Those guys been fighting for many
Yes,
years, like for thousands of years.
Remember, in reverse, you said, imagine should that be the approach that Mandela took in 1994, where we're going to be now.
That's true. But,
You see?
but Mandela took a different route.
100%.
I can't imagine we still be fighting about the Employment Equity Act in 500 years' time, Sepo.
I guess that's the work of the opposition. If someone is doing something, one must oppose. So that they try to strike a balance, even though there's no balance. One must always oppose. You see?
Sepo, I think we are live already. I think we're supposed to
Okay.
say welcome to this. Good, Sepo, how are you?
I'm good, and you, Toby?
All right, welcome to this week's edition of Chaile Time. So
Thank you very
it's
much.
good to see you.
Welcome too.
Listen, I haven't seen you this week. I'm at the CCMA. You are, I don't know where you are.
I'm implementing contracts. I was doing Section 189 retrenchment. But it was funny because I went there to be the facilitator and the one explaining, but I just got there and then sat there and do the introduction. As soon as I've done, the employer jumped in and started addressing the union.
Yeah.
This is what we're going through. This is the phase what we're going through. Then I just had to take a sit back because you could see the man was frustrated. He said for the past 2 years they are struggling to pay their debts. You know, the companies will be shutting down, so they don't have any other. I think there's a structure that has changed in their business.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a what do you call it? An abattoir.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a structure that changed because it seems like most companies that they are supplying, they are absorbing into the businesses. So the way their style of business now, it's outdated. It's like, you remember in the cinemas when we used to have 35mm print and then boom, all of a sudden there's digital. See,
Yeah.
people had to be retrenched. So I think that's the way it goes. So yeah.
But listen, we're on a bit of a sensitive topic today, racism.
Before we do that, can we send the shout out first?
Hey?
Can we send the shout out first before we touch into what we
Yeah, we've got this new part of Chaile Time where we promote employees or job seekers. So, yeah, who's our shout out today?
Our shout out today, it's Grand Pedro.
Grand Pedro, yeah?
Yes. It seems like this person has been in the market since 2003. So
Okay.
he comes with vast knowledge, a diploma in HR management, and then
Sure.
an MBA.
Oh,
So he's been involved in operations manager, HR manager. He's been involved in positions like project management and leadership, technical proficiency, operations management. You know, there's a lot of experience there. So should be a suitable position.
be available.
Be available. I think he must be highly recommended. And then,
Let's have a bit of a look. Let's see,
yeah,
Mr. Pedro, what it's all about.
yeah.
Hi, my name is Grant Pedro, and I'm an HR generalist with a strong background in industrial relations, and operations, particularly in the commercial cleaning and construction sectors. In addition to my hands-on experience with South African labor laws, dispute resolution, and CCMA processes, my core strength lies in building solid, trust-based relationships across all levels of the organization, including supervisors, unions, as well as executive management. I focus on creating collaborative, compliant, and high-performance workplace environments. I hold a diploma in human resource management, backed by over 10 years of experience in people operations and leadership. And I'm currently based in Alberton. My name is Pedro, and I'd love the opportunity to bring value, structure, and positive impact to your team. Thank you.
Anyway, what are we talking about today?
No, before we get to what we're talking about today, the subject has a tone of racism today. But just first quickly, Juju. Last week, Friday I think it was, he and his team, they marched to Kleinfontein. Have you heard, Sebo?
I believe you said Kleinfontein is around somewhere.
Apparently it's an Afrikaner, for lack of a better word, let's call it a township here somewhere in Pretoria.
Mini Orania.
They call it Orania Light, apparently.
Okay.
Eh? So apparently it's a place where only Afrikaners live. Now, I didn't know this, but anyway, so I don't know the circumstances. Is it now like impoverished people where just white people happen to come and live, or is it just like normal middle class or upper class Afrikaners coming together because they're creating like another Oranje kind of style? I don't know.
But what was his goal of marching there? What is that he wanted to achieve? Allegedly.
Well, now you're asking me for my opinion. Now I've got my opinion. That
Yeah,
may
you
not
can just use the word
allegedly. That may not necessarily be their official view.
Yeah.
I think I've got two views on the matter. Obviously, there's what's been said. I suppose it's opposing Afrikanerdom, if you want to put it this way, where Afrikaners exclude themselves and they live in exclusivity or whatever the case might be. So I think there's that structural discrimination, if it is, and I'm not saying it is or is not discrimination, but I think in their mind it is structural discrimination. They're trying to break those bricks down. And secondly, you know, Tsepo, long time ago, I was in a corporate and we had a Mr. Sebui. He was the union shop steward. But I had the idea he hated white people. Today is about race, okay?
Yeah.
So I had the idea I was a senior manager, branch manager there. And I one day thought to myself, if he had a little box with a button in that can make white people disappear, he will just press that button.
They will just vanish.
He will just press that button the whole day, every day, until every white man is gone. Now, I don't know if it's true or not, but that's the feeling I got from this. So when I look at Juju, when he do these kind of things, I don't say he hates white people, but he likes getting into our nerves.
But you love Juju.
Listen,
I'm not the one who said that. You said it
I don't
yourself.
support him, okay? I don't support his political views.
But
there's a lot to learn from the guy, man. Did you see how that man lost weight? I mean, I've been trying for decades. He gets it like overnight, you see. But anyway, the thing is, he likes getting in the nerves of white people. Sometimes I think, like the song Kill the Boer, I've heard, now this can be nonsense, I've heard of people sitting next to him on a plane or something. He's apparently the nicest guy you can think of. I've heard that. But he's got this button where he gets under the nerves of the whites. And I think he's doing this on purpose, just to get under our skin, you know. The kill the boer thing. He doesn't really want to kill a boer. He's just, because he knows it's upsetting us. That's why.
I said?
And it is upsetting.
He's on the opposition side.
He's in the opposition side.
So he will always oppose.
But you know, Tepper, just come back to Kleinfontein. That's why I think it is a privilege. I know there's big news in the media at the moment about the DA suing the government for the Employment Equity Amendment Act and whatever the case may be. And how can you do that? You're a GNU partner or whatever the case may be. The reality of the matter is, you know, society evolves. It's like a marriage.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a difference between a couple being married for 1 week who's still fighting about toothpaste and the socks on the floor, and a couple who's been married for 40 years and they are perfectly in sync, you see. So in 1,000 years from now, other nations will look at us and think, wow, we are so in sync. You can't believe we're reading history books 1,000 years ago we had apartheid. But anyway, so I think, you know, we evolve by suing each other and having a social debate about certain elements and so on and so forth. So we mustn't frown on that.
A wise man,
We find each other this way.
a wise man once said to me, at least we are fighting through pen and paper and knowledge. We are not bombing each other and stuff.
It's like a marriage. At least we're talking.
So,
But now the thing is this. This is a point I want to make. Throughout, as society evolved, there are certain monuments where we overcame certain key issues. Like, for instance, 91 or 1992, I remember I was still very young. There was a referendum in white South Africa. Also around that time, and I think that was because of a result of that referendum. So that is one monument. Nelson Mandela, the ANC was unbanned. Nelson Mandela came out of the prison. 1994, another monument. We had our first democratic elections. And then also around about 95 and so, you know, the LRA was established. Our labor laws, that's also another monument. The Employment Equity Act, the basic conditions.
Thing that ever happened to South African employees.
Nice. But now there's one thing Julius Malema said, allegedly, because you don't know if the media accurately relate what people are saying. But anyway, in terms of the article I read, in this whole Kleinfontein march on last Friday, I think it was, there's one thing Malema said that he's got a message to black people, and that is that whites are not better than them. And I was just when I read that, I was just like, sure. For me, that was a monument in 1994, maybe in the first few years after 1994, where there was still a conversation among maybe black South Africa and white South Africa, definitely West South Africa, that we are better than you guys. But since then, I haven't thought of that again. So for me, I didn't think that this is still an issue where black people think that whites are better, Tsepo. Is it like that?
This is not my view also, né?
Right?
But I'm just thinking out of the box. People will say, you are saying this from a point of privilege.
Whether it is privilege or not, the truth is I haven't thought of it. So I'm not saying it's not like that.
Yes.
I'm saying I thought we passed that. I'm not saying we are past racism. I'm not saying we are past discrimination. I'm talking about this one monument. Because, you know, in the meantime, you have black people, some of the best I've worked for brilliant managers, both white and blacks, but probably the best I've worked for was one or two black guys. Okay, like, let me say his name, Clive Marumo, probably the best COO I've ever worked for. That man was brilliant. Okay, look at the Springbok team. You want to tell the Springbok black people now, ask them, do they think they're better than whites? Those guys are the best in the world, not just whites. You know, so I would have thought that from a conversation perspective, it's no longer relevant, this whole debate about who's the best. But maybe for some people, and in terms of our case we're going to talk about, okay, maybe he's still there, maybe there's still something there.
And maybe also
I'm just saying, when I was young, I grew up in a certain church, I'm not going to say the names. And they told us whiteys, we are like the symbolic Israel. We're a superior race. And strangely enough, after 1994, the same church is no longer preaching that. So it's interesting how you change your stories based on the political circumstances.
The evolution.
Your interpretation of the Bible changes when the president changes. Nah, like what's happening in America. But anyway, let's not lose focus there.
Okay.
But yeah, so what we are talking about today. So before we get there, I was at conciliation. In the last 7 days, there's 2 cases standing out. A conciliation I had and an arbitration I had. And both was for, I represent employers and the employees. They are white-collar workers. With other words, they are very high profile in the company. So the employee under conciliation. Now, I've got my thing, I know the laws. I know we need to prove the procedural and substantive fairness of her dismissal. But she doesn't know this. She doesn't know the law. And I know that I need to speak mana to the ears of the commissioner. So when I had opportunity conciliation, in one sentence, I explained why the dismissal was procedurally and substantively fair. And all the sub-elements to that in one sentence. That employee eventually got so upset that she almost shouted. Almost. It wasn't really a shout, but it was almost there, okay? Frustrated that she's now accusing the chairperson or the commissioner for allowing me to be in there because she cannot compete with me. She's frustrated because I know the law and I know all these things and she can't compete with that.
How did she establish that everything was unfair?
But this is the thing. It's based on an emotion. It's based on... Now, I've heard... I don't know if it's true, but I've heard there by the employer that her husband was sitting in the foyer and apparently he's the one who's stoking her to come to the CCMA. So it's all based on emotion. I've got this feeling of what is fair and what is not fair. So I just want to promote quickly for employees. In the bottom, in the description of this podcast, this YouTube channel, there's a lot of goodies in there. There's links to fresh vacancies in our Harmony network. There are, for the shout out, we put the people's CVs on there. There's other resources there too. And we're going to put this little booklet up there too. This is a small booklet with some cartoon characters in there, Godfrey and Lena, where they illustrate labor law. But this is specifically designed for employees. This is for employees to understand the legal principles of most of the day-to-day labor law that you find in the workplace. So there's actually a warning on the cover page. It says here, so first of all, it's an employee guide to fair discipline and dismissals in the workplace, so for them to check their employers out. Are you ticking the boxes or not? But then there's a warning. It says, don't let your boss stop you from taking this guide to work.
So it can be your pocket thing.
It's your pocket thing. It's actually a small thing. It's like it's a PDF document that you can download there for free. It's like an A5 size, and it will explain to you all the basics of labor law, of where your company, especially why they're doing what they're doing. And employers, before you get a heart attack, why am I training employees? It actually helps employers too, because sometimes you discipline staff and they don't understand what's happening. Why? They don't understand the legal framework. So even now you dismiss someone, now they go to the CCMA. Why? Because they feel in their heart this is unfair because you actually just don't like me. You see, that's why now they go to the CCMA. But hopefully, if they read this, they will understand better. Okay, no, man, I don't have a case here. I shouldn't go to the CCMA. So this is to help them. So the title for today, Chepo, is Preparing for Battle. The key factors that relates to an unfair dismissal dispute. Preparing for battle. So the idea is to assist employees and employers, but especially employees, before you go to the CCMA, after you've been dismissed. Now we are looking at a dismissal dispute. Before you go to the CCMA, because I'm going to show my employer. Yeah. Before we do that, I'm going to show my employer now, you see. Take the emotion out of this, because what you're doing is you are suing your employer. I know it sounds great, especially if your employer is an asshole now. It sounds wonderful. You're going to sue him at the CCMA. And you know what's the best part? It's for free, Chepo.
Yeah. So, but I'm going to play the devil's advocate here. It's easy to say to someone, park your emotions. It's not. Because you know what's coming with it? I've been doing this for them. Knocking off at 9 p.m., waking up at 5 in the morning, driving this, doing this. Now they dismiss me just like that. No, because you know what? Remember, in time, you get attached. So that is why it's not easy to.
But that is the base. But the problem is, Chaile, that is the basis for them filing a dispute to the CCMA. But they still stole the ball, Chaile.
I know.
And this is where employees must understand. And this is where they must understand that, yes, file your CCMA dispute, but you must know that this is not about, I've worked so many years and I became attached and I used to work for another company for 20 years without any issues and now I come here, 1 year later they want to dismiss me. It's not about that. In your heart it may be that, but it's not.
2 weeks back, I had a cashier who took, you can see on the footage, she went to the pie thingy, took those pies, went to a scale that she's not supposed to operate, print out a lesser price than the normal price of those pies and put it there. In a hearing, she started bursting into tears. And I'm like, why are you crying? So you see, emotions cannot be packed. I'm just rectifying you on that. Yes, you wish people can pack their emotions, but they won't.
But now we have what I experienced yesterday. Yesterday was brilliant. So this lady, she was dismissed. Number one, for accusing a fellow white lady of being a racist without any substance to it. So there were things like the way she looks at me, and there were things like there were two people who resigned from the company. One happened to be a black man, and another one happened to be a white man. She sent a very nice email. This white lady now sent a very nice email, or wishing the white man well for his future, but she didn't do it to the black man. Now she's racist, and she accused her of racism. So the lady put a grievance against her, and in the grievance hearing, you are racist. But I mean, I'm like, maybe they had an affair.
Maybe they are related.
Maybe they're related. Or maybe they just work colleagues that are friendly with each other. There can be many reasons other than racism why you will send the email to the one and not the other one. Okay? But now the second charge was, she's got this lady now, the applicant in the CCMA case, she has a lot of people reporting into her. But there's only one white person that reports into her, a white woman, okay? And what she did is she took a picture of this woman, put it on her WhatsApp status, and then said in the text, you know when you've arrived in your career, when you have a white person reporting to you.
She was flexing now. 1994.
And you know what? In the grievance hearing, you must read the minutes. She fools on, shame. She full on admit that for her, a white person is like a trophy.
1994, the first black person to sit at eat spare ribs. It's a goal.
So in a way, because of my pastoral background, my theology background, I was like, go girl, you're right. Yes. So I feel obviously this is an issue for her. So for her, there is still this black-white thing. So clearly she's looking at South Africans through the goggles of color or race or something like that. But I also know, on the other hand, how our courts view this. They don't take racism in the workplace very lightly.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she was ultimately dismissed, and now she went to the CCMA, and she had a union rep there who was the general secretary of the union. Apparently, man, I must take my hat off to that union. I've actually not seen this before, to be honest with you, because normally unions will come in bashing, whatever the case may be. We offered a settlement. There's a good culture in this company. Yeah. Now, I had 16 bundles and audio recordings. I had my speaker there on the table. We're going to listen to audio recordings. Because transcribed records, everything is there. I've got 5 witnesses waiting outside. Okay? So now the commissioner already know the balances of scales. Okay, she's got nothing, no witness, nothing. She's got this emotion about they don't like me, and
I left my previous employer.
I was my previous employer. I was there for 15 years. Yes. Now this one I was dismissed within the first year, and I want my job back. And she's aggressive. She's like stubborn. I want my job back. So, but the company, this is not the thing. At the time of the hearing, when she was dismissed, the CEO called her in and said, listen, why don't we part ways with 6 months' salary?
Mutually so.
Yeah, mutually, No, I want my job back. Now she's saying, we offered a settlement of 3 months, which she eventually accepted. But now she's like, if I knew this is what a dispute resolution is about, I would have accepted the 6 months.
But now you see,
if I knew that this is what it's about,
I would have accepted it. You see what I like about time is that in time, emotions will fade out. Like I said, in time, this thing of racism, it will fade away. That's what I said earlier when we started our conversation. So in time also, emotions do fade away. And then, because also I think the planning around the CCMA, one day I was sitting and thinking, after dismissal, you have 30 days.
Yeah.
It's a short period. Then you go there and then you start spitting your emotions, and then we go there for conciliation only, to try and dismantle you, But you go home and think. Now you have 90 days. The first 30 days, then a person will be like, why am I still doing this? Yeah. And I phone these people, they must give me a reference and I can move on with my life. You see now, in time, things do happen. You see now, in time...
But you see, what happened here now? Yeah, but it wasn't so easy for her to accept. She had this union guy, and he was like preaching to her why she doesn't have a case and why she must accept the settlement. We spoke to her, we broke down that wall of defense for 3 hours, and Tsepo. And he started talking about how he took a big government company to the labor court to dismiss him unfairly, and he won the case. And I thought, remember I always said, it's also in that yellow book, they never split the difference. Yeah. The black swan. The black swan is the thing you don't know, that's what you don't know about. So every case, there's something surprising there. And this day, it was that union rep. So he was just preaching at her why she doesn't have prospects and she must accept the settlement. And then he started giving examples of his own life. But he's an older man, older men are very sentimental, okay? And then I'm like, this is my black swan. So I'm like, sir, really? What is your name? I must write it down properly. I must go research. Wow, did you really do that? Yeah, like, that must have been amazing.
Then
wow.
You are winning him and then she's losing him.
So I was just preaching to him and blowing his ego, and he was preaching to her. And so we start teaming up against her. And eventually the commissioner was also like, yeah, I like this party. So he also joined in, And most of the time, actually, I spent outside because the two of them, they were just, eventually she came down from reinstatement retrospective to 12 months to 6 months to 4 months, and eventually she accepted the 3 months, And that is when she said, if I knew this, I would have accepted it that's 6 months already. But anyway, so Tsepo, I want to explain what is it about. So if you're an employee and also an employer, because ultimately these are the principles. So if you're an employee, it really is not about your emotion. Okay, I'm not saying there are no space for your circumstances in terms of the pressure, the stress, the fact that you couldn't pay your debt, that you've been unemployed for a while now. But there's a very small part of that, important part, but a small part, and that is where it comes to your mitigating factors. When you want to speak about your prejudice as an employee when you were dismissed. So that's the correct context for that emotion, if you want to put it that way. But other than that, there's still a Labor Relations Act. There are laws. So when it comes to a misconduct dismissal dispute, okay, we're talking about two things that an employee must argue: whether that dismissal is procedurally or substantively unfair. And you as an employee can actually choose, was the dismissal only procedurally unfair or only substantively unfair or both procedurally and substantively unfair. It's your choice. But you don't just say so, especially when it comes to procedures. Procedure, when it comes to misconduct dismissal, it's a tick box. It's a very specific thing, if I want to put it this way. It's not Yeah, they put me in a hearing to dismissing me, but before that, I submitted a grievance and they didn't deal with the grievance correctly, and then I got a warning, and I don't agree with the warning. So I don't agree with the procedure that eventually I was dismissed under. You see, it's not all of that stuff. Okay. Now let me read in the law the procedure. It's a tick box. Okay, we find it in the Code of Good Practice in Schedule 8, subsection 4. The heading is actually fair procedure. Okay, and it's actually not calling it a hearing, it's calling it an investigation. So that disciplinary hearing is the investigation.
Yes.
You know what, sometimes employees will say, you know what, the hearing was unfair because they were supposed to do investigation first. The hearing is the investigation. Okay, so the employer, number one, should notify the employee of the allegations using a form and a language that the employee can reasonably understand. So did they charge you, and did you understand the charges? Tick box, yes or no. And this is how it happens at the CCMA.
Yes.
When you complain about procedure, commissioners can say, no, don't worry. Just answer my questions. Did they charge you, and did you understand the charges? Yes, sir. Okay, great. Tick. Okay. Number two, the employee should be allowed the opportunity to state the case in response to the allegations. Did they allow you to talk? To defend yourself? Yes, sir. Tick. Okay. Number three, the employee should be entitled to a reasonable time to prepare the response, and that's number three. Did you have a reasonable time to prepare? Remember when the chairperson asked you that you had sufficient time? You said yes. Tick.
I had one union official saying, it must be 7 days. I'm like, just show me where it's written saying 7 days.
There's nothing here that says 7 days. It says reasonable time, okay? The employee should be offered assistance. They've got the right to the assistance of a trade union representative or a fellow employee. Now we're talking about a shop steward who's also an employee. So the person that can represent you is typically a fellow employee. Did they offer you that right? Yes, sir. Tick. Okay. After the inquiry, the employer should communicate the decision taken and preferably furnish the employee with a written notification of the decision. Did they give you the outcome of the hearing? Yes, sir. Tick. Then there's one landmine here. Subsection 3. If the employee is dismissed, the employee should be given the reason for dismissal and reminded of any rights to refer the matter to a council with jurisdiction or to the CCMA within 30 days. Okay. A lot of employers don't know that. Another tick. Did they inform you of your right to refer it to the CCMA? Tick. That's it. Tick, 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 tick. Procedure done. If the boxes are all ticked, let's not talk about procedure again. Procedure's done. It's not about your feeling about grievances before and warnings before and all these kind of things. That's it. So if you're an employee, you want to prepare for battle, that's what we're talking about. That, from a procedural perspective. Not emotion, not your many years of service at the previous employer, that. Right, now let's jump to substance. Why are you laughing, Chepo?
I'm reminded of a certain case that we did together of the gentleman who said, I was taking my pills. I was heavily sedated. I was, during that hearing, I was standing up, drinking water, taking my pills. So I'm not even sure that this man refused for me to call witnesses. Hey, that gentleman, but yeah.
Anyway, substantive fairness. There are some elements. Okay. Yes. Number one, the charges. Okay. Is the charge clear enough with sufficient detail? So, if I charge a person for theft, don't just say theft. Personally, I won't charge somebody with theft because that's more criminal case, a charge. In labor law, the burden of proof is on the balance of probability. So I don't need proof really that the person stole something. I just need to prove the probabilities. And this is important. If you're an employee, the employer don't need 100% proof. They only need to prove the probability that it is so. Otherwise, no employer will ever be able to dismiss an employee. Yeah. You see. So you need to prove on the balance of probability. So theft is more a criminal kind of charge. In criminal cases, you need to prove beyond reasonable doubt. It's not the end of the world. A lot of cases, employers win by charging somebody with theft is not really an issue, but that's just my personal preference. But anyway, let's know, I will personally charge for gross dishonesty, that you took it or whatever the case may be. But when it comes to the charge, let's use the word theft now. Don't just say theft. Because if you're a criminal and you're a habitual thief, and I'm charged for theft, I'm not going to know what to prepare for because I don't know what they know, the employer know. Is it the thing I stole yesterday or last week?
Eish.
So I don't know. So I'm like, how do you prepare? No, which one? Was it the money I stole yesterday or the money I stole last week? Shit, which money is it now? So you want sufficient detail, like theft in that yesterday you took 100 Rand out of the till or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Okay? If a charge is vague, as long as I've explained it to you and you know what it's about, it's fine, no problem. But that is the one thing you check. Is there sufficient detail in the charge? Number 2, did the employer lead evidence to prove the charge on the balance of probability? It can't just be the employer sitting there and he says so. Especially unless if it's true and you say, yeah, it is like that, no problem.
Unauthorized removal of company property.
I think I know what you're talking about, but
yeah.
Anyway, so the employer need to have some kind of evidence if you deny the allegation that suggests that it is really so. Okay?
Yes.
That's the second principle of substantive fairness that you need to focus on. Even if you're an employer that's representing the employer at the CCMA, or if you're an employee who's trying to defend yourself, not the emotion of things, it's that. Okay? Thirdly, the employer must justify why it was reasonable to dismiss the employee. And that can be anything. I mean, I suppose the employer will take their disciplinary code into consideration. So if you're an employee and they've dismissed you, contradicting their own code, well, that's how you prepare for battle. You go to the code. What does the code say? Sometimes the code say final warning, but they dismissed you. So you must go look at that. Okay? Go look at the flexibility of that code. Okay? Other elements of prejudice is, was the trust really broken and why do they say so? Other elements is true and genuine consistency, where the employer did not apply the principle of dismissal consistently to employees with similar kind of misconduct, and where the employer were aware of the other people's misconduct. Because sometimes an employee pitch up at CCMA Chepo telling the CCMA commissioner that the employer is inconsistent, but this is the first time they tell the employer that the other person did the same thing. No, the employer must have been aware of the other misconduct of the other person, you see.
I've had a commissioner who reprimanded a union official for opening that door because now he was supposed to bring proof and everything because the employer says, no, I'm not.
I don't know about these kind of things.
Okay. I'm focusing here because the severity here and there's this.
Yeah, and you'll also look at the prejudice of the employer. I mean, did he actually lose money? Is it a matter of you being a driver and you were speeding and you could have been involved in an accident, you could have killed somebody? You know, that prejudice is important, but also your own prejudice. And this is where your personal circumstances coming in, you know, that you also need to emphasize on. But you see, in principle, these are the principles that you need to fight when you go to the CCMA to your employer. Now, also, in terms of the actual hearing, the nature of that hearing itself, sometimes employees complain it wasn't like a criminal trial. It wasn't like all these steps, you know. Now, there's this landmark labor court case, Avril Elizabeth Home for the Handicapped, okay, which the court sort of settled the idea of how strenuous and burdensome should a hearing be in terms of the fair procedure, Schedule 8.4. That case actually say that a disciplinary hearing is not like a criminal trial. The only thing an employer must do is he must allow for dialogue and then for an opportunity to reflect before they make a decision to dismiss. So it's a bit of a watered down expectation as far as the hearing is concerned. I know a lot of corporates, you have a chairperson, all these lawyers sitting there, and you have all these steps and stuff. That's not really what it's about. I mean, the law must apply to the corporate, but also to the person who wants to dismiss their gardener.
Yes.
Same principles, you see. So, but yeah, so this is for today. This is, you know, the procedure and the substance. It is not your emotion.
Yes.
So if the case is about the emotional things, maybe you should not sue your employer because it's going to be tough. And then there's one thing to consider. An arbitration award is with prejudice. That means it becomes public record, and it stays in your record for the rest of your life. You must know
Like the
this.
landmark case, you see, we will keep on referring on that because your name is there, and then
Your name is there. Your future employers may ask a verification agency to check on arbitration awards. They may phone your previous employer, and they will then just email them the arbitration award.
and then you are untouchable.
It's on your life forever. Also, if you know what you must also consider, the fact that you have a right to sue somebody doesn't mean you must do it. So even if it was unfair, I'm not trying to deprive people from their rights to go to the CCMA.
I was going there saying,
Even if
some
you
people
win the
will
arbitration,
misinterpret this thing and say, are you saying they mustn't exercise their right?
I'm not saying they mustn't. I'm saying life happens, and you must think for you. It's what the purpose of Chaile Time is to give you the information. You do with it what you want. Okay.
100%.
So even if you do, as an employee, win the arbitration, some employers will say, "Great." Other employers will say in their hearts, "You're the kind of person that goes to the CCMA if I do something wrong.
You're the CCMA puppet.
You're the CCMA puppet."
No, I get you. I understand.
This is life, eh? This is life. And that tag sits with you forever. Once that arbitration award is out, it's out on your record forever. That's all today, Tsepo.
Thank you very much, Toby. Very insightful.
But before we go, we don't forget it's Chaile job review. So every week now we list fresh vacancies that we found in our network, our Harmony People network, during that week. So check out just after this Chaile job review, and you can also find the links with the fresh vacancies in the description below.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tsepo. See you next week.
See you next week. Bye.
Good morning, Harmony people. Let's have a look at some of the vacancies posted nationwide on our Harmony People's network this week. First up, we have an opening for a learning and development manager at Econo Foods in Cape Town. Also in Cape Town, we have an opening for a network engineer L2. There's a position for a product development specialist in the apparel industry also in Cape Town. In Gauteng, Chicken Port is looking for a junior factory assistant. And in the Eastern Cape, Marensky is looking for an HR officer. For the full information of the mentioned positions, how to apply, as well as more available positions, find the vacancy link in the description. You will also find a link to a useful video on how to compose a winning CV and have a successful interview. Tune in again next week for more Harmony vacancies.